Hey everybody, I am back with a new art video where I'm painting a Don't Starve fan art done with Winsor and Newton Cotman watercolor paints. Very nice. So I do have a lot to talk about for this particular video, and I think I'll just start off by talking about the watercolors themselves. Now this is the first time I've used these watercolors. It's also the first time I've ever used watercolors from a tube. The only other watercolors I've used besides these were the Dr. P.H. Martin Radiant watercolors, and those were liquid watercolors in a little jar, a little dropper. And these are quite different from those. I mean, obviously these are in a tube, so they're more of like a paste, and all the other watercolors are liquid, so obviously they're different in that regard, but I personally think that the Winsor and Newton watercolors are a bit more versatile than the Dr. P.H. Martin. God, names are so long. The Dr. P.H. Martin Radiant watercolors that I was using beforehand. Those watercolors were really saturated in color, and I ended up having to use a lot of the watercolor to really get what I wanted. And I had to use a lot less paint with the Winsor and Newton Cotman watercolors that I used for this painting. And the colors weren't as vibrant as the other watercolors, which is a good thing because the P.H. Martin ones were really saturated and really just vibrant. And they're not... That's good for some artwork, but not for all. So that's why I think these watercolors I used can be applied for a wider variety of paintings. So yes, first time using these. My mom got them for me for Christmas. I just used them. Well, I started using them at the end of February. So yeah, it only took me a couple months to finally use them. But I do quite like them a lot. Even though I wasn't sure what I was doing half the time I was painting this. I'll get to that in a moment. And let's see, I also used masking fluid for this artwork. As you can see, I have the eyes of the spiders and the deer clops and the other eye thing over on the left. I don't play Don't Starve, so I don't know all the names for the monsters, so Hi phone. Anyway, that happens all the time when I make videos. Oh god. So yes, masking fluid I used, and I used that because I just wanted certain things to not have that base coat I did at the very beginning of yellow, orange, and brown on it. I don't really like masking fluid. Sometimes it's necessary when you're doing watercolor and ink paintings, especially if you're using washes of color for those paintings. If you want to like save parts, you kind of have to use masking fluid, and I never like using it because it's a pain in the ass. I hate putting it on, I hate peeling it off even more, and then I happen to miss certain spots, like I skip like the tiniest spot in the masking fluid, and then I get paint underneath the masking fluid. It happens to me a lot. So I try to only use it like a little bit at a time. I don't try to cover large areas because it's a pain in the ass. Oh, I don't know if you noticed, but like 3 minutes of this video was slightly out of focus. Yeah, there's that. It's kind of hard to tell if stuff's in focus on my little LCD screen for the camera, so it's only for 3 minutes, so it's not that bad. And what else? Technical wise, so for watercolor paintings or ink paintings, I like to stretch my watercolor paper And to do that, you usually soak it in a pool of water for a few minutes, depending on how heavy your paper is. And then you would obviously take it out of the water, pat it dry slightly, so just damp, so it's not soaking wet, and then you would stretch it on whatever surface you want to stretch it over. For this painting, what I did, I have adjustable stretcher bars, and I can like take the stretcher bars apart and put them together whichever way I want. So I used those stretcher bars, and then I took a hammer and some thumbtacks, so you can kind of see right now, and I would just hammer in the thumbtacks through the painting and into the stretcher bars, and that's how I stretch my canvas. Well, not my canvas, oh my god. Stretch my paper. So I just took the adjustable stretcher bars, thumbtacks, hammer, and I had like a ½ inch in between each thumbtack. So if you're wondering why there's little push pins, thumbtacks, whatever you want to call them, in like the sides of the frames, that's why, because that's how I stretch my paper. There's other ways to stretch watercolor paper. There's like gummed tape or butcher's tape. It has like, it's a tape that has glue on it, obviously, but it doesn't activate until you wet it. So some people stretch watercolor paper with that, so they'll put it on a board and then stretch it with that. Some people will make a wheat paste, and some people will staple it onto a board and stretch it that way, or they'll staple it onto stretcher bars. I chose a slightly easier method with the thumbtacks. So yeah. I guess this is the third or second time I've done it this way, and this is the first time it was successful. The first time I did this was like last year when I first tried to do this painting. I'll get into that. It didn't really work out all that well, and it was all warped, but this time it worked out pretty well, and it wasn't completely warped. At least not as bad as the first time I tried this. Anyway. Oh yeah. So I originally wanted this to be an ink painting, but apparently I completely forgot how to do full color ink paintings because, I don't know, it's been like a year since I've done them, so like I try to do an ink wash, and it's really hard to do ink washes, especially for larger surfaces, because ink dries really quickly, and also when it's dry you permanently stains the paper and you can't take it off the paper, unlike watercolors. So yeah, that was a miserable experience. The first time I tried to paint this, didn't work. Maybe I'll put a little picture of it in the video, maybe, if I'm not lazy. So yeah, that was a catastrophe. So I redid it with watercolor, and I'm very happy I did. It turned out a lot better than what it would have if I just tried to power through the ink. Oh, that would have been terrible if I did that. Okay. That's all for that, I think. Other stuff I want to talk about. Alright, so I mentioned before that I had no idea how to actually do this painting. I was kind of just winging it, and I was like, oh god, I have no idea what I'm doing, because I literally had no idea what I was doing. Hello again, phone. That's kind of like a common theme for me when I do paintings or any artwork in general. I'm just kind of like, oh god, what am I doing? Sometimes I get super discouraged and I just give up and stop, but I didn't do that for this one. I actually kept going. But unfortunately, since I have zero confidence, it took me like a week to get through this one, because, like, I think for a couple days while I was painting this, I was like, oh god, this is awful. Oh no, ew. And I just didn't want to paint or work on it at all for like a few days out of the week. So that's why this took me longer than it should have, but I got it done, so whatever. And I also mentioned before that I originally tried to do this last year in May to be exact, and this painting was originally supposed to be for a contest. Hey. So the YouTuber Manga Minx had a thumbnail contest, so And she was giving away a Cintiq, I think, which is a pretty expensive prize to give away. But anyway, so this went on in May. This went on in May, and there was a couple games you can draw thumbnails for, and I chose Don't Starve because I was like, maybe I can make something like that. So I sketched it out, and all that jazz, and it's like, oh, this is nice. Maybe I could win something. And if not, that's okay. I mean, whatever. So I drew the whole sketch, put it on the watercolor paper the first time around, stretched it and all that stuff. And then I took a look at some of the entries on Minx's Tumblr, and I was like, oh, some of these are really nice. And then I kept looking at them, and I kept looking at them, and I look at my painting. Well, it wasn't even a painting at that point, it was just a sketch. And then I looked at the other entries again, and I was like, oh, mine's a piece of shit, isn't it? So I got super discouraged, and I never finished it. I was like, oh, this is god awful. I don't want to finish this. This is terrible. And I had like a moment of reprieve during like a I hate using this word, but depressive episode last year. And I was like, oh, I'll do this contest and try to get back into drawing, because I stopped for like 2 months or something like that. And apparently that didn't work the way I expected. It actually was the exact opposite, because then after I got so discouraged from that, I stopped drawing for another like 2 months. Made another sketch in July for a different drawing, and I was like, oh, this is garbage too, and then I stopped until gosh, I think I stopped for a long time. I stopped and then I started again for Inktober, so July till October. That was a couple months. It was a couple months. I can't count, okay? So yeah, the original sketch was done 2017 in May for Manga Mink's thumbnail contest thing she was doing. I saw the other entries. I was like, oh, those are good, mine are shit, I give up. So that's the story behind this painting. That's also why I painted a Don't Starve fan art, even though I don't play that game at all. But I do like the visual style of the game, so that's why I decided to choose that as my thumbnail. Oh look! It's all done. I rambled on for a lot longer than I thought, and I think there was more I wanted to talk about, but I don't think I could fit any more in here. So, yeah. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't. Probably shouldn't. Hey, see you later. Bye-bye.